Hello, everybody. How you doing? Welcome. It's Shadow at Night for Wednesday, January the 15th, 2025. I'm just looking for a couple of things here. Bear with me. Got a couple of guests tonight, and one of them is not going to be able to join us until about 15 minutes into the show. The theme for tonight is going to be division in the conservative movement in Canada. The mainstream conservative versus, I guess, what we could call the fringe conservative or the even further right conservative, not necessarily extreme conservative, the kind that you picture from 1980s, early 1980s punk rock. The guys with the spiked hair, shaved on both sides, and big, huge 2-foot spikes down the middle. Those guys from the punk rock movement. Remember those guys, right? Those guys, those are the guys I still picture when somebody says extreme right, not the modern family going to church on Sunday morning. But anyway, we do have a divide in our conservative family in this country, and I'm not sure exactly when it goes back to. I would say maybe the Freedom Convoy. Well, a great event that really, I know this is going to sound contradictory of me to say, really brought our country together, but also divided parts of us into little bitty pieces. And we're going to discuss that tonight and possible ways to bring it back together with an election looming, right? You've got PPC bros. That's what we call them, PPC bros. And you've got people who are voting for Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party, and many, many, many more voting for the Conservatives as opposed to the PPC, if you believe the polls. Welcome to the show tonight, you guys. I'm going to go say some quick hellos. Sandra's watching tonight. Kev, I hope you guys are having a fantastic time in Mexico. I've been seeing some of your videos from some of the clubs you've been going to. Well, not clubs. I mean, probably coffee shops to see bands playing and whatnot. It looks like you're having a fantastic time down there in PV. The Shadow at Night live stream is brought to you by CanadaNanoSilver.com. The Nano Silver liquid, the backup your body needs no matter how healthy you are. But if you're one of these people that goes through winter feeling sick almost every single day, this could possibly help you out. From needing a little extra support to needing an overhaul, man. Silverceuticals immune support is light enough for everyone, but strong enough for those who really, really need it. Of course, made with the power of Silverceutical technology. It is available on the website at CanadaNanoSilver.com. Again, that is CanadaNanoSilver.com. Retail locations scattered all across the country, over 35 of them now, with more popping up all over the place. If you want to be a retailer of these awesome products, get a hold of Kevin and Anna through the contact tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. If you want a retail location near you, you can find one on the retail locations tab at CanadaNanoSilver.com. Barb, hello, how are you? Brian is watching tonight from Alberta. Hello, Dan. It was a gorgeous day, was it? I didn't get outside today, at least not yet. 1 degree in Manitoba, but I hear we're headed for a big deep freeze starting maybe on Sunday. For 2 straight weeks, it's going to be like a high of minus 30 and a low of minus 35. Climate change. Hello, Janet, watching in Smithers. Paul is watching tonight. Paul is the guy who made those Pudos. Remember a couple of years ago, it was like a plastic thing. Trudeau's face looked like poo. He called it a Pudo. I thought it was very, very good. Very great idea, marketing idea. And sadly, with Trudeau resigning, what are you going to do with all those extra Pudos that you've got, brother? Might want to do a flash blitz or something. Hello, Kim and Lulu and everybody watching tonight on Facebook, on Rumble, on YouTube, on Twitch, on X, on Telegram. I didn't go to Rumble yet. I'm about to say hello to Nana Sue and Braveheart and Celtic Love and Esky Dogs and Chicken Hair and Ryderm and Patricia 0711 and Blood Clot. Robin and Eva. I hope you guys are doing great tonight. Don't forget, like and share. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can. It's important that people hear this stuff. And I do have a couple of stories for the normies out there, like the actual ones that don't know what's going on. They know there's something kind of wonky going on, but they don't know exactly what it is, and they certainly won't listen to you. Maybe if they hear it from somebody else, they'll start going, hey, I'm going to look into this myself. I'm going to go on Google. Don't go on Google. That's what first thing you say to them. Don't go on Google, man. Go on Brave. Don't use Google. They're just going to modify your search results. Okay, so the first story of the night, and Greg Wycliffe and Jason Lavigne are coming on, guys, in the next 10 or 15 minutes. Greg is backstage right now from TNC.news. There's a poll out there. It shows a majority of Canadians want an early election. This is a new poll. According to Leger 360, this poll taken from January 10th to 13th, nearly 6 in 10 Canadians want an election before the fixed election date of October 20th. Leger asked 1,545 Canadian voters, randomly selected and statistically weighed to be representative of Canada's population, what their thoughts were on the ongoing Liberal Party leadership race and a potential election. Though a margin of error cannot be associated with a blah, 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 blah. According to the survey, 29% of Canadians don't care to wait for the Liberals to choose a new leader and want an election to be called immediately. Another third, 30% of Canadians want one held no later than spring of this year. Some 32% of Canadians would rather wait until the fixed election date for the general. The numbers have shifted when compared to an Abacus data survey, which was conducted on the day former Finance Minister and Deputy Prime Minister Chrystia Freeland's fiery resignation just hours before being set to announce the government's fall economic statement. That poll found that 60% of Canadians wanted an immediate election before Trudeau's resignation announcement. So there is a very big hunger in this country for an election. Huge. And generally speaking, Canadians hate voting. I don't know why that is. Oh, I got to go vote. It's another election. And even politicians say, we don't want to have to drag Canadians to the polls. Like, come on, man. We should be enthusiastic about wanting to get out there and vote. And it looks like we are, finally. Justin Trudeau met with the premiers today to figure out their strategy to go up against Trump, who's being inaugurated on Monday. And here's what he had to say to the left-wing corporate media earlier this afternoon.
We had an excellent conversation today from around the table with passionate Canadians who are proud to represent very different regions of the country, but who are all united on one thing, which is we will stand up for Canada. We will protect Canadians. We will make sure that we are there to show what this country is made of. At the same time, we've also agreed that no one region of the country should disproportionately bear the burden of standing up for all other Canadians. We have made it very clear that everything is on the table as potential responses, but we've also been very, very clear that it has to be fair across the country. If the American administration moves forward with its plans on tariffs, it will first and foremost hurt American citizens and American consumers, but it'll also hurt Canadians. And Canadians need to stand together to make sure we're there for each other, particularly those who may be carrying a heavier load than others because of what the American administration might do. In terms of my own decisions, I will not be running in the upcoming election. As to what I might be doing later, I honestly haven't had much time to think about that at all. I am entirely focused on doing the job that Canadians elected me to do in an extraordinarily pivotal time right now. The U.S. inauguration and the weeks that follow are something that is of deep, deep importance to Canadians, and we are entirely focused on that as a team.
Let me ask you a question. Did you, if you did vote for Justin Trudeau, let's just say you stumbled across this show by accident, and you voted for Trudeau maybe once, not all 3 times, but maybe once. Did you vote for him to go up against Donald Trump and handle the country's economy in a time of incredible upheaval and stress right now, when you've got a president coming in who is going to put 25% tariffs on our country across the board? This is our biggest trading partner, man. This is 70% of the trades we do with everybody in the world. It's with the Americans. And that idiot? I don't think so. Question is who? Is it Pierre Poilievre? Is it going to be Mark Carney? Interesting article written in the National Post today from John Ivison. Let me throw it up on the screen here for you. They say that he's already, and this is what I was saying last night and the night before and last week, I think. Mark Carney is already anointed. He is the chosen one. They're saying that Chrystia Freeland is going to throw her hat in the ring tomorrow, maybe. And there's some Liberal MPs and cabinet ministers even who are already putting up on X, I support Chrystia Freeland for leader of the Liberal Party of Canada. Mark Holland, notable among them. That guy with the bow tie, the health minister, you know him. Prone to hysterical behavior and outbursts in committee and in the House of Commons. Well, I'm not going to read the whole article here, but I just want to read part of this from the National Post, again by John Ivison. The onslaught, the online onslaught has already started against Mark Carney. Canada Proud is running an ad portraying Carney as an out-of-touch elitist, which he is. He's a former governor of the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, an advisor to Justin Trudeau, and a member of the World Economic Forum. Carney will try to convince Canadians that, now they're talking about him as prime minister already. They're not talking about him in the Liberal leadership race. They're already talking about him as prime minister and how he may try to prolong the Liberal mandate, at least until the fixed election day of October 20th of this year, but possibly longer. I'm not sure if you guys understand this, but in the Canadian Constitution, governments can serve for up to 5 years. And as long as they have the support of one of the opposition parties, probably the NDP, and I hear that Mark Carney is already talking to Jagmeet Singh, they can stay in power for a year longer than we think, past October. Look it up. You can find it. It's in the Canadian Constitution. So we could have, what I'm saying here is an unelected prime minister in power for almost 2 years. And I say unelected because he's not an MP. Once he is an elected MP, then he's technically elected as an MP because we don't vote directly for our prime minister in the Westminster system that we run. Anyway, Carney's going to try and convince Canadians that such broad experience that he's got, as a banker, is a positive. With the threat of Donald Trump's tariffs looming, it may not hurt to remind voters he has experience in international crisis management. After all, in October of 2008, Carney and the late Conservative finance minister Jim Flaherty were in the U.S. Treasury cash room with the other G7 finance ministers and central bankers when the consensus was reached to backstop the banking system with liquidity to prevent a repeat of the Great Depression. The momentum gathering behind Carney is such that there is speculation that Chrystia Freeland, his presumed closest contender, may decide not to run after all, even though 2 hours ago she did post on X that she's got something to say very soon. We don't know what exactly that is. In my opinion, I think she's not going to run. They're both WEF. It doesn't matter. They're both weffers, as they, call each other. I'm a weffer. You a weffer? I'm a weffer. We're weffers. I think she's not going to run. I think Carney's going to be the prime minister. And I think, like I said last night, he's going to appoint her as deputy prime minister and minister of finance. Many Liberals believe the time is long overdue for their party to return to its traditional position, straddling the center of the political spectrum. And that's where Carney would take them. That is an absolutely ludicrous statement. We have already heard his positions on climate change, and if you don't follow the plan, you will be punished. It's absolutely outrageous. Oh, by the way, the World Economic Forum starts in Davos on Monday. And here's Klaus Schwab talking about climate change.
I see a tremendous effort in terms of rallying now behind net zero. Not only governments, but business. We have a number of initiatives at the World Economic Forum. For example, we work sector by sector how to decarbonize those industries. So it is an awareness now it's generally accepted that climate change, if we do not tackle with it, could be the next big, let's say, virus. With much more damaging and long-term consequences compared to COVID-19.
That sounds like Mark Carney. That sounds like Justin Trudeau. That sounds like Chrystia Freeland. Hey, let's look at this. Here's the board of trustees of the World Economic Forum. And maybe Freeland won't run because she's busy with other things, like being a board member, a board of trustee member on the World Economic Forum. You know, it's funny. The left-wing corporate media is always saying things like, oh, you guys, you know, you're just going crazy about the World Economic Forum. It's just a bunch of rich people who get together to drink brandy once a year in the mountains in Switzerland. It's not a big deal. They don't really do anything. They don't have any influence at all. Okay, well, let's look and see who sits on the board here. Queen Rania Al Abdullah of the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan. Mukesh D. Ambani, Chairman and Managing Director of Reliance Industries. Mark Benoff, Chair and Executive Officer at Salesforce. Oh, look, there's Chrystia Freeland right there. I see they still have her listed as Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister of Canada. Maybe they don't have to change that. Lawrence Fink, who has also said, yeah, we're going to influence behaviors in the corporate world if they don't fall in line. He's the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at BlackRock. Orit Gadish, Chairman, Bain & Company. Kristalina Georgieva, Managing Director of the International Monetary Fund. Al Gore, Andre Hoffman, the Chairman of Massalaz. Joe Kaiser, Chairman of the Supervisory Board, Siemens Energy. Christine Lagarde, President of the European Central Bank. Yo-Yo Ma, the cellist. What? Nah, these people don't have any influence at all. Patrice Motsipi, the founder and executive chairman of the African Rainbow Minerals Foundation. Yeah, they're good. They're fine. They don't do anything. They just get together and I guess drink and, you know, maybe do some whatever it is that rich people do. Let's bring Greg Wycliffe on. Greg, hello. Thank you for coming back to the show.
Thank you for having me. Yo-Yo Ma.
Yo-Yo Ma. I want to talk about the division in the conservative movement, but I want to wait until Lavigne joins the show. That's going to be in like 5 or 10 minutes. He's just wrapping up his show. So
sure.
Let's talk about what you heard so far. Klaus Schwab, Justin Trudeau, Mark Carney, Chrystia Freeland. What do you think is going down there?
Yeah, I mean, it's good that your audience is primed with the World Economic Forum stuff, because that's really kind of a really important thing to understand of, hey, a lot of these things are coming from unelected bureaucrats who are part of this organization, the United Nations. And that's why it seems that the policies imposed locally to Canada or even to your local community don't make any sense. It's because it's coming from this foreign body that serves foreign special interests or corporate interests much before the Canadian people. And yeah, there you have it. You have Thighs. What's her name again? Yeah, we have her. Yeah, Freeland on the board. And yeah, sorry about that. Sorry for the imagery there.
That's what you think of when you think of Chrystia Freeland.
There was a meme of her I saw the one time, and there was cellulite involved. I'm sorry for the graphic imagery, but it's burned into my psyche. I apologize.
I see a picture of her in the House of Commons. I guess maybe they were having a long session and she had her leg up here and she was picking at her feet, and I just went, ugh.
I'm sorry I even brought it up, Shadow. But
it's dinner hour somewhere. People are eating dinner watching this.
And the other thing too is it Baird? Someone Baird used to
John
be
Baird. Okay,
John Baird
so let me
to the Conservative Party. Yeah.
Let me throw up a video here, because this is part of the divide that we're facing in the conservative movement in this country. So this is Pierre Poilievre not so long ago talking about the World Economic Forum.
No staff, no ministers, no MPs in my caucus will be involved whatsoever in that organization. It is a group of high-flying, high-tax, high-carbon hypocrites who all got on their private jets to fly off to a remote ski village where they talked about how working-class people should not be allowed to heat their homes or drive their pickup trucks. I'm not going to work for a group of globalist billionaires who serve their own interests at the expense of everyone else. And I'd like to specifically point out Mark Carney. Here he was celebrating the central banks who caused the inflation by printing trillions of dollars so that people like multimillionaires like him could have their asset values inflated, while the purchasing power of working class people and seniors was wasted away by inflation. A massive wealth transfer from the have-nots to the have-yachts. A common sense conservative government will bring home control of our democracy to this country, and it's not just on that issue. We will ban the IRGC to end the interference of the 700 agents that are operating in this country on behalf of the terrorist regime in Tehran, and that's according to Global News. We'll shut down foreign-controlled police stations. We will bring in a foreign influence registry. We will bring home control of our democracy, and we'll make this a country that works for its people, the common people, and the common sense of the common people, united for our common home. Thank you.
All right, so there's Pierre Poilievre talking about what you were just saying, like, well, I'm not going to have anybody in my staff, no MPs, nobody in cabinet associated with the World Economic Forum. But you say, and you're right, John Baird, who is the co-chair of the Poilievre campaign, is in fact a young global leader. He was named that in 2008. I'm not sure if he's still associated with the World Economic Forum, if he still goes there, but he certainly has connections over there. And yeah, that's definitely spurious, man.
Yeah, and I don't want to sound mean. I don't want to sound crass, but this Conservative Party thinks you're stupid, guys. They think that you will not look up the history of this Conservative Party and how Harper signed us on to the Sustainable Development Agenda, actually, while he was in power. It's hold
on. Wasn't that Mulrooney back in 92 or 93? Again, a conservative, but a progressive conservative at that time.
I mean, maybe I got the United Nations policy wrong. The point is this idea that all of a sudden that this Conservative Party no longer has any ties to the World Economic Forum. We would never serve the interests of billionaires. Well, why haven't you disavowed big pharma and vaccine mandates pointedly? That would be a great opportunity to do that, because we all know this is the reason why politicians will not disavow big pharma, which is because that's connected to billionaire lobby groups. So this is it's very rich that Poilievre loves to push himself away from the World Economic Forum. How's it going, Jason?
I'm good, Greg. How are you doing? And you guys are on fire. You're absolutely correct. Can you really get the WEF out of the CPC? Is that really a thing? It's like trying to get the vax out of your body. Can you really take it out once it's in?
Hey, Jason, where are you, man? You look like you're out for a fancy dinner or something.
Fancy, yeah. I'm at Salt and Pepper here in Breton, Alberta. I'm hanging out with the public. I just finished my show. We now do our show live at least 3 times a week on the road.
Nice.
We want to get out there and talk to people before and after the show and share the message with people that's never seen something like this before. And
nice.
we're in Breton, Alberta right now.
Hey, so listen, I want to ask you before we get into this conservative divide thing, because this is a topic that is worth talking about. And it's not just political either. It does happen at the grassroots level. It happens online all the time. And the reason I want to talk about this is because of that Spaces that I accidentally ran into on X the other day. And I heard Greg
Wasn't that fun?
I heard you talk. That was ridiculous. I couldn't believe how petty it was. Look at Greg. But I want to hear about the Coots 3, Marco and the boys. What's the deal with them?
Well, unfortunately, the sentencing came in and it was pretty harsh. We were expecting a pretty harsh sentence for Marco. He was the more vocal leader. He was presented during the trial as really being a figurehead for the entire convoy and the blockade down in Coots. So his sentence came in and it's 120 days in jail. So he was incarcerated immediately. He's expected to serve 2/3 of that. So I guess we'll see him maybe around the summertime. George Jensen was also sentenced. He received 90 days community incarceration, or he's going to be serving that in the community, so not in jail. And Alex Van Herk, he had a lawyer change last minute. He fired his lawyer, so he'll be coming back. It's going to be like 25 days from now or so, and he'll be hearing his fate as well. I expect it's going to be somewhere in between the two. because George came out with an apology. He basically had to take a knee in order to save his family and what was going on there. Alex is a very stubborn guy. He really wants to stand on his principles. And then Marco is the stubborn guy who definitely did stand on his principles. So we're expecting Alex is going to come back and he'll have a sentence somewhere between the two of those.
Marco put a message out on social media through James Sowery today, I think it was.
James Sowery, yeah.
Yeah, Sowery. And he told us what his first couple of days in lockup were like and how strangely familiar with it he was, considering all the time he spent talking to the other Coots prisoners for, 3 years, I guess it was. So he had a meeting. Did they get assigned counselors in prison? Is that how it works?
I'm sure.
Case
I'm
workers?
sure because it's rehabilitation, right? So they're going to try and change who you are while they got their hands on you. And Marco, I'm sure they're really trying to get their claws into him.
Well, they sat down, Marco and this caseworker, and the caseworker said to him, after hearing Marco's story, he said, "You don't belong in here, man. We got to get you out of here." So that is promising, and maybe the same thing happens for George and everybody, hopefully. I mean, they weren't really, I mean, they did break the law, technically speaking, but they also were the conduit between the protesters and the RCMP. And without those guys, I mean, things could have gotten really ugly out there, yeah?
Yeah, they were the peacekeepers, a facilitator. They helped keep the calm, both sides. When the police would escalate, they would help bring it down. When the other side would escalate, they'd help bring it down. So yes, Marco's in there serving 120 days for keeping the peace.
Is it true that he one of his offenses is moving a pylon?
That would be James Sowery. He came really close to a pylon. And it would also be similar to Randy Hillard, who moved a gate or some sort of, just a little fencing. And all of a sudden that's assault on police. So James Sowery is the one that hit a pylon. Yeah.
That's ridiculous. Hey, listen, I want to play you guys a video because we were talking, Jason, before you arrived just now. We were talking about the political divide in the conservative movement in Canada. And I mean, if you look at the polls, you go, well, the conservatives are what, like 45, 46%. And the PPC shows 2, 3, sometimes 4%. I've seen one poll where they're at 1%. So they're very, very low in the polls right now. And you and I, Jason, were talking this morning about Maxime Bernier not being invited or not being able to speak at the leaders debate. And we can discuss that. But here's a video from a guy called Berta Proud Dad on X. Listen to what he has to say.
Just don't get it. So I'm going to spell it out for you, okay? It's not that I don't like the policies of the PPC party. It is the fact that they don't have a chance at being elected, okay? You can say whatever you want about Pierre, whatever you want. He's going to open the energy industry. He knows we need to drill. He knows we need pipelines. He knows that's what's needed to service the debt. Something that should have been done a long time ago. So are you asking people to vote for a party that has a 0% chance of doing any of that and go back to liberalism for the next 4 years in hopes that you guys can get enough seats in the next 50 years? Is that what you are trying to ask people? Because if that's the case, you are willing to put Canada on hold for 50 years to garner support and in hopes of maybe getting a seat. With Pierre, it's a sure chance, and it's a...
Okay, so we've seen enough of that. I'm not sure if you guys know who this guy is. This is the first time I've seen him.
I've seen him before. I've reacted to his TikToks before. Yeah, I have. I mean... Oh my God, where to start with this? First of all, the energy is so insecure and desperate, and it's because in their heart of hearts, they know that Poilievre is not really it, but they use their practical, logical brain to justify it. Well, I know he's not going to do anything about immigration. I know he's not talking about the gender ideology. I know he doesn't, there's so many points that he fails at, but logically, practically, he's more likely to get in. So I'm just going to shove all of that aside, shoving all of my principles and values aside, just because short term, this will make sense. And just before we go to the rest of the panel, like, these people don't understand how politics works. Like, by having the PPC even existing, it pushes things further to the right. By having policies that are further to the right, by having people like Jason Lavigne standing up as a candidate, myself stood up as a candidate in 2019 to represent opposing mass immigration. That was seen as so racist, so horrible back in 2019. But I took the slings and arrows. Max Bernier took the slings and arrows. So then people can, further push the envelope towards the right. You need people like the PPC to push things to the right. And it's weird that he thinks, just by sitting here and supporting Poilievre, that's going to help the country the most. It's like, no, that's not how this works. I can see how. Yeah, sorry.
No, that's all right, man. That's cool. I know you're passionate about the subject. That's why I want you on the show.
and what do you think? Yeah, and what I think is it's nice to see an NDP supporter getting on TikTok provide his message, because that's exactly what he's advocating for. He's advocating for the NDP or the Liberal to continue to be the opposition. And what we actually want is some conservative opposition. I think Pierre being in there is definitely going to bring some change. And let's even give him some credit. Let's just assume he's going to be one of the first politicians that follow through with everything he says. Let's just assume and give him that. He still needs some conservative opposition, or he's going to be dealing with Liberals and NDP. So when I hear CPCers say, look, let's get rid of the PPC, they have a 0% chance, what they're really saying out loud is, we're okay with the NDP being balance of power. We're okay with the NDP, teaming up with the Liberals and controlling our government, and we're okay with the current state of the country, because that's his message. But I also want to kind of say he's conflating winning a seat with forming government. Like, we need to take these in baby steps. We need to win a seat. We'll have a few people in there, and we'll show what the PPC can do. What we're going to do is we're going to have a two-way road with Canadians. We're going to go in there and bring your voice, but we're also going to bring out what happens in there. What we're going to open is at the door to the actual Parliament and the House. Yes, you have question period and you can see what they're talking about, but what happens when those cameras are turned off? That's where we can go in there, and even just one voice will open those curtains.
So I take us behind the scenes then? Is that the plan?
And I absolutely will have a bunch of complaints by all the other members, because I'm always knocking on doors and I'm always asking the hard questions. And I don't play the games during the question period. I'll actually re-ask the question and I'll hit back harder. But what he's missing in that particular video is he's conflating winning one seat with forming a majority government and executing on our policies. What the PPC is really good at is providing a benchmark and a platform for us to attain and try and get to. And this is where conservative accountability, I think, will help a PR government.
Okay, so this is what I was hoping to get to, and I'm happy we've gotten to this. The PPC does not have the chance to form any kind of majority government in this country. But, I said last night, I think I said last week, and this is what I've been saying. I said the same thing as Birded Dad. I like the policies. I like the policies. If I'm to pick, if I just landed from the moon and I went, oh, look at these policies, I like these, and I didn't know anything about the polls at all, I would go, yeah, PPC, that's what I'm voting for. But I'm looking at the numbers and I'm thinking, all right, what riding am I in? Do they even register the PPC here? Probably not. So what I think needs to be done is, well, the PPC could maybe run 343 candidates in this upcoming election, whenever it is, whether it's in May, whether it's in October, whether it's in 2026. Wow. They need to focus on some ridings they have a really good opportunity at. Having said that, we've seen Max Bernier run for a seat in Manitoba. This was a year and a half ago when he ran in Portage-Lisgar. And he got less votes than the kid who ran for the PPC in the previous election, because he was a local guy. So what are the issues that, and this is going to be a free and fair discussion, because if we're going to criticize the Conservative Party, and they deserve to be criticized for the shortcomings and the things they don't want to talk about, we have to talk about the PPC as well. So let me play this clip going back to 2017, I think, when Max was still a member of the Conservative Party, and I do believe he was running for the leadership of the party at the time. Watch this and hear what he says.
Leaders of big governments keep saying that we need more government programs and more government spending to help the poor, because they are being treated unfairly in a free economy. But we know that is completely nonsense. Hundreds of millions of people, the poorest people of the world, have been lifted out of poverty in China, in India, and in other third world countries.
He just said China and India and other third world countries. Now, in 2017, China had still the second largest economy in the world, and he's calling them a poor country. But he goes on here.
Have been left out poverty in China, in India, and in other third world countries in recent decades because they have less government and more freedom. It is not because they have a huge government. It's because they have a government that gives freedom to people, a government like we used to have here in Canada before Trudeau has been elected.
All right, so
That's a tough one to listen to in current times, I got to tell you.
So let me ask you guys, I'm sure you've seen that before. What was he
I
talking
think that was
about?
my first time seeing that one, actually. But
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Like, what the hell? I mean, he's talking about China, you know, like as a free country, giving their citizens more freedom because they have smaller governments. What?
I mean, I think the first thing to you know, get out of the way is this was when Max was in a really bad place. He was messed up in the head. He was still part of the Conservative Party of Canada. Who knows what was going through his head? Who knows what sort of, you know, Conservative Party insiders were telling him what to say? But I'm kind of being a little bit facetious, but seriously, he was still part of the Conservative Party back then. So I don't really know what conservative futures. I mean, it's certainly a blunder. That's for sure. It's certainly a clip that doesn't come across very well. If we want to be more like China, that's definitely not good rhetoric. And it would be interesting to present that to him today, to be like, hey, Max, how do you explain this? Because I don't think he would be like, no, that's what I believe still. I'm sure he would probably clarify something or other of.
I would hope so. I had him on a couple of years ago. I didn't play the clip to him then. I didn't want to hit him with that. I just wanted to talk
next
about
time. Next time.
But he's a very nice guy, you know. I mean, he's a very approachable guy. But something I was talking with you, Jason, about earlier today was, how can the PPC get traction if they're not going to be allowed in this leaders debate because of the new rules that they've come out with, where you have to, what is it now? You have to have 4% in the polls.
4% of the polls, as opposed to 4% in the previous election, which we did qualify for, and that's the change in the rule. So that used to be 4% of the previous election, which we had 840,000 votes. That took us over 4%, but now they changed it to, it has to be an average of the national polls 28 days before the election. On that day, if you are 4% or more, then you will be invited. So he went from qualified just yesterday to, we don't know if he can qualify now. But I think that's more of a call to action for the PPC to answer your first question. How do we get more traction? Well, we don't complain and cry about this rule change. We just take it on and move on. And we come in with 5% or 6% or even 10%. But we got some challenges, because when they're doing the poll, they're asking Conservative, Liberal, NDP, Green, and other. That needs to say PPC. Is
that happen in every polling firm? I'm not sure. I do see some results for the PPC that come in through different polling agencies, not ECOS, but I do see it through Leger and the other ones. So it's not like they're listed as other with every agency, right?
No, and that's where there's going to be some complications and where we need to see some consistency. So I really believe that if it's going to be fair, it has to be PPC across the board as an option. And we've been seeing this through text messages. People have been sending me the screenshots. So they've been receiving polls through text messages right now. And that's one of the ones I saw today that had other, and it didn't have PPC. But I've been seeing other polls all over the internet where there's 1,975 people responding. And that's the ones I think you see where it's 1% to 5% for the PPC, and it varies all the time. But that's under 2,000.
Are you suggesting the polling is off when it comes to the PPC?
I'm suggesting polling in general is off. Like Hillary's supposed to be president many years ago. That didn't happen. And the polling.
The Canadian polling, I mean, I've seen a very close correlation between the polling and what actually happens on election day, whether it's provincial or whether it's federal. I mean, unless they're working together with Elections Canada. And remember, all these pollsters are competitors.
I don't think they have to. Yeah. But they're also in the same club, right? They also don't want to say to each other. It's like mutually assured destruction. You don't want a bunch of pollsters saying don't trust the other ones, because then you're just going to have a big mess of the market. But it's also in how they ask the question. If the question is, who do you think will win? Well, you'll get a different answer. Who do you want to win? Well, you'll get a different answer. And what if we voted by policy? Because what you said at the beginning is, if we voted by policy, it'd be a PPC sweep, because you'd actually be voting for the policies that you want. But it's all into the question is how they're going to frame it, how they're going to get it out there, and do they have a selected list of people that will respond to polls favorably in certain ways?
What you're talking about is changing the system as opposed to conforming to the system and working within the system. And this is something,
trying to find a fair way with the system. Try and at least be fair. If we're going to pretend like it's fair, let's at least make it fair.
I can go back to my old radio days and I can tell you exactly, because I've got a marketing mind, right? Like, this is just something that you pick up from all these years, where you see what works, what doesn't, where you can read the ratings, where you can read a poll, where you get to learn what people want to hear, right? And if you take a lesson from the Trump election campaign this past couple of years, what did he do differently this time than he did in the previous election? He formed this team around him. He had Tulsi Gabbard, right? He had, his kid. I mean, like, there was all of these people around him, RFK Jr., so, and former Democrats. So he probably drew some Democrats over to his side for that. And these massive celebrations where they all showed up and there were thousands of people there. He created general excitement about the future. And Max, I'm not sure if it's because of lack of money or maybe it's a little bit of ego. Max is the guy who created the PPC, and he hasn't brought in any, and I don't mean to take anything away from you guys. I know that you ran for the PPC, Greg, and you're running for them, Jason, but I mean, we need national profile people, right? People whose names are known. So why not Randy Hillier? Why not Derek Sloan? Why not get these folks together and form this dream team so that you can get people's attention? Because it seems to, and the door knocking and social media presence needs to be constant, and it's not. So, that's one of the things that Max could do, and maybe temper down a little bit some of the rhetoric that he puts out there, because he does put rhetoric out on his own. I mean, when they were talking about gun control, what did Max do? He put a picture of himself holding a semi-automatic, and I thought, okay, that was, what are you doing, man? Like, seriously. And he had this kind of crazy smile on his face. And I thought that was over the top. So you're not going to reach Canadians like that. Canadians are a little bit more mild-mannered than the Americans are. Am I making points with you guys? Are you hearing what I'm saying here?
Yeah, and I'll
need to move away from the fringe, is what I'm saying, if they want to get any kind of foothold at all on the ground.
Yeah, and from my perspective, and it's not an issue, because I actually agree with Max on his principles on this one, is he doesn't pander. So that could be why it feels a little bit different than what a lot of people are used to, because what you're kind of describing is a type of pandering mentality. Like, don't do the picture because some people are not going to like that. Well, that's a type of pandering.
No. That's not what I'm saying. It's not about pandering. It's about softening maybe your message a little bit, and it's about a ground game. No. Soften the message just a little bit. Just a little bit. You don't need to be so radical, is what I'm saying. And that's how he comes across, even to me. And I believe in his policies. But when I see that stuff, my first instinct, after having worked for years in a profession where, you got to know what people want and what they don't want, I go, oh man, it's not going to help them. That's just not going to help.
And I hear where you're coming from, because perception and image is important, especially when we have a society that is very emotional when it comes to what they're looking for. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw to Greg, because I don't know if there's an answer to that, because damned if you do, damned if you don't. So if it's not a gun, it might be an apple that he's chewing, and then maybe people will be happier. But what I do like about what he does, what Max does, is he doesn't seem to take the wind and then change his message of the day based on what's going on. He's very consistent and he sticks to his principles. And that may
But
rub
I'm
some
not
people the
talking
wrong
about
way.
even changing your message, because I understand what you're saying, and his platform has stayed the same for 6 years now. I mean, it will change with the times, obviously, but I like the message about immigration control. I like the message about guns and the dairy cartel. I like all of that stuff, but it's how the message is delivered is what I'm saying. And the fact that Max seems to be a lone wolf out there. I mean, bring the people in. Why is it? And again, this comes down to the division in the conservative movement, right? You got Sloan, who's doing his thing with the Ontario party. You got Randy. I'm not sure if they pissed each other off somehow down the road in the past 3 or 4 years. And, if the writer side of the conservative movement wants any traction at all, they got to come together instead of all this bitching and moaning like in that X Spaces the other day. Greg, what do you think, man?
Yeah, so I mean, it's very easy.
Let me preface it by saying I know exactly what you're thinking. You're probably thinking, I'm not giving up my principles to pander to some clowns who'll never vote for me anyway. I get it. I understand. Go ahead.
It's very easy to say, hey, Max isn't doing a good job. Max could be doing this better. I hear people say he's not radical enough. I hear people say he's too soft. Personally, I actually agree with both of those sentiments on a tweet to tweet or sort of message to message basis. And it's really tough, but let's go back to that video of Alberta Proud, right? And he's saying like, they're just not going to win. I might agree with every single freaking policy. It's much better in every single way, but they're just not going to win. And it's really funny to me because there's a lot of conservatives who are like, I can't stand Trudeau. He's just good looking. He's just shallow. He says all of this vapid stuff. Like, look at this guy. Like, why can't we just focus on the facts and on the policies? And then wouldn't you know it? Oh yeah, I like the PPC policies, but like he doesn't look as good. His message isn't as dialed in. So then you go back to the shallow version of politics once again, which makes Trudeau win, right? Like the people give in to the shallowness of politics where he's very attractive. He sounds good. He says the things I like. All of his policies suck. In fact, he doesn't even really talk about his policies. Same with Pierre Poilievre. But I'm not actually going to stick to my values and principles with Max because he doesn't say it right. He doesn't make me feel good. I don't get to, rub my nipples and feel good when he speaks on camera.
That's how it works, man.
I agree with that. But
so you want more of the same?
Let me finish my.
What I'm saying. What I'm saying is that's how it works. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
I was going to say, if you were to talk to all of these conservatives and ask them, what would you prefer? Would you prefer, conservative majority or conservative majority with like 2 or 3 PPC seats? If they were smart and wanted to turn this country around, they would be like, yeah, it would be better to have a few people. So everyone would agree that it would be better to have PPC seats in Parliament. Yet they're like, no, they're not going to win, not going to do it. And I guess my point is, they're a very new party. And yes, they could have made better decisions here or there. They could make better decisions here or there, of course. But what I realized when I joined is I can help them. I can use my time to get involved in politics to try to better represent their message, to get off my ass, off the couch, to actually try to help this country. That is what PPC represents to me. It is an opportunity for a Canadian who is tired of these 2 establishment parties to actually get up and do something and actually represent your values. Guess what? You're going to go on podcasts. People are going to make fun of Max and say he could be doing better. And you know what? Shout out, you're right. A lot of your criticisms, you make points here. But at the same time, it's like, what else are we going to do? This is the best, he's the most positioned. He's the largest platform outside of the establishment parties. It's the best way to possibly push further to the right because of his policies, because he does have, this professional platform. And yeah, it could be better.
What about the idea of bringing some other people, like-minded people in with familiarity?
We could talk all day about improvements. Okay, let me tell you, I've had calls with PPC headquarters of like, hey, let's try to dial this in. Let's try to make this better. I don't even necessarily disagree with you. But it's a matter of like looking at the situation of like, we got to work with what we got. And by supporting the status quo, you're not actually changing anything. By supporting Pierre Poilievre, you're not really changing anything. He's too afraid to talk about major issues. I would say mass immigration being the biggest one. So this idea of like, well, he's going to win. It's like, okay, well, you're not actually helping shift the country in any direction. You're sort of just kind of keeping the status quo alive. And people don't want to see that because it's uncomfortable because, oh shit, this actually might be some work to try and actually, like I said, get off my ass and try to do something. I'd rather just sit on the couch and vote for PP and assume everything is going to be fine.
There are some voices inside the Conservative Party who believe as we believe.
Yeah, I've heard this one before. Yeah,
no, like there are a couple of guys like that. Leslyn Lewis is actually put out a petition about removing Canada from the UN. I think it was a year and a half ago. Am I right about that?
So I started SayFreeSpeech.ca, and speaking of free speech, do you know how little free speech you have as a Conservative Party candidate? You have to sign your life away of like, make sure you don't say this, make sure you don't say that, make sure you don't say that. Like, these people are prisoners. I know they're like your members of parliament, but as Conservative Party candidates, like, there is so much they are not allowed to say. And you can, I agree with, hey, I talked to my MP privately. We had a beer together. He's Conservative Party. He agrees with me. Is he going to do anything about it? Does he even have the capability to do anything about it?
You're right.
Don't listen to this lip service. Because guess what? They're just going to satisfy you, and then they're going to go on and vote with the rest of the party, and nothing will change.
But here's the thing, like you need to maintain some kind of party discipline. You do, right? You can't have people going off the reservation and saying things that, are going to piss people. Look, you covered the convoy. You know what the left-wing corporate media did, right? Mm-hmm. And there's still people out there who believe that everybody who went there was an extreme right-wing conspirator who wanted sedition for Canada. That's what they believe based upon that left-wing corporate media coverage, and they would do it again. I mean, they've done it to Max, right? They've already done it to Max. They've sunk him. The Conservative Party had a hand in that as well with political operatives. That's the way politics is played. It's kind of dirty, but
true.
Ultimately, you do have to maintain some kind of conformity, so you don't have these explosions where you're stepping on landmines, and the media can take advantage of that very easily. And that 45% the Conservatives have right now could come down to 35% very easily if somebody says or does the wrong thing. Because you know what the media is like on Conservatives, right? Trudeau can wear blackface all day long, and they'll say, "Oh well, it's a life lesson for every Canadian." If Poilievre wore blackface, that would be it for him. And the same goes for Max or any other Conservative. That's just the way it is, sadly, in this country, until we get rid of the CBC. And I wonder, will he do that? Will he defund the CBC?
Great question.
Pierre?
Yeah, Pierre. What do you think, Jason?
Question. Defund the CBC. I think he's going to attack them for a bit, but they're going to morph and they're going to change as well. They're not stupid. The people over there know where their paychecks are going to come from. So you're going to see them start to change some of their tone, maybe come out and make some apologies and make some big announcements of firings and some cleaning of the house in order to kowtow and to kind of conform to what the expectation will be for them. I also think that Pierre is going to elevate alt media. So the Rebels and the True North and those kind of people as well, you're going to start seeing them become a little bit more politically connected to the CBC. But unfortunately, I don't think they're going to hit the CBC the way we need them to. We actually need opposition. We don't need cooperation on the media level. I just want to kind of backtrack a little bit on the Max side of things. It's also very possible that Max isn't building the party to become the prime minister. He's building the party to create a platform for the next prime minister. He has built a party that's going to have a successor to him. He hasn't built the people around him who are going to hold him up as the savior, and he's going to be the dictator forever. He's put people in there like me, and Greg was in there. We're independent-minded people. We do not conform to things like whips and that kind of stuff. And his entire party's full of that. So it's a platform which eventually we're going to see the next leader come out of. And he created that, and he knows that. When I spoke to him, I needed to ensure that my independence stayed with me, and that includes my journalism. What I didn't want is HQ telling me I can't criticize the PPC, or if they came out with something, I can't talk about it, or try to give me some sort of talking points because it was the item of the day. There is a big separation. Max has given us the independence, and he basically said, look, you're smart people, you know what you want, you know what your constituents want, and I trust you. Now, are we going to make mistakes? Are we going to say things? Absolutely. And we're going to grow with those bruises and bumps. But that's the platform that we stand on. And I think we're just going to get stronger. And Greg has witnessed this. Iron Sharp
make mistakes. Oh, yeah, man. We're going to make 100%. Them all right.
I made 3 in this episode already. Yeah, for sure. And we're going to learn from them as well. But iron sharpens iron. And we kind of need this process to happen if we're going to be a real party for the future.
And just to piggyback on that too, because when I first joined the PPC and I went to this 2019 conference, like I will never forget this experience because I was shoulder to shoulder with all of these Canadians across the country who were just like me, hearts totally in the right place, never been in politics in their lives before, hearts in the right place, want to do something, but like first time in politics. And it's a really sweet group of people who are just trying to do the right thing, trying to do right by their country. And that's why when Jason said, yeah, we're going to make mistakes, it's like, yeah, because the type of people who are in the situation of the PPC are trying to do, like, you see the desperation everywhere with Canadians of like, how are we going to do something here?
And you have absolutely, you see those people coming in, these nice, sweet people, middle class, average Canadians coming in. Yeah, I want some change. I want to see. They have no idea how the system works. And then when they see how people actually can be, oh my God, how devastating is that?
I have a direct example of something like that. I was, I'm a media guy. I'm a media nerd. I've always followed how media works. I saw how they were smearing Maxime Bernier, and I was at the conference, and the people are like, well, what are we going to do if the media calls us racist? And I was like, buddy, it's not an if. Okay. Like it's a when they call you racist, bud. Like, but and connecting back to your point earlier, Shadow, I kind of want to push back on it a bit because you were talking about how the media will destroy you if you dare to step out of line. Mm-hmm. And on one hand, you're absolutely right. If you're running a political party, you need to be very calculated, very measured in what you say and how you say it. However, if you are too afraid of the media, especially as a right-wing person, you are also not doing it properly. Okay. Mm-hmm. We saw the rise of not just nationalism in America, but across the world because Trump was so inspiring in 2016. He said, we're going to build a wall. Okay. Like he said these things. He said, they're bringing drugs. They're raping. He's racist. Being called racist by CNN and every major news outlet was not the end of his campaign. It was the beginning of his campaign that rose to him.
But that's Donald Trump. That's different, right? Like,
is it
Donald
Trump? Is it? Yeah. Is it different?
Yes. First of all, he's Donald Trump.
But you're talking about people on the right wing who are afraid of getting destroyed by the liberal media, right? So how like, of course, Trump he's magnanimous and he's very charismatic, and I understand where you're coming from there.
Well, it's also that, like, he's got the money to be able to insulate himself in case anything goes wrong.
Right? That also makes you a target too, though. Like he's got to walk a fine line there.
How is he insulated by any of the horrible smear jobs by the mainstream media, which is really the damage? No, in politics, that is the damage of being called all these names by the major media outlets.
Not if you're surrounded by your own people all the time and you've got the money. You don't have to worry about living next to a neighbor who's going to spit on your windshield, or pull out your flowers from your garden in the springtime. I mean, like that, when I say insulated, I mean, he is rich and insulated like that, so he doesn't have to worry about being spit on in public. He's Donald Trump also too. He carries a massive persona with him, and probably the most famous person in the world.
But we're talking about two different things here now, because you were implying that getting smeared by the media is the end of your political career, whereas Trump.
No, I never said it was the end. I say it's a battle that you have to face. Right. And a lot of people haven't got the spine to go ahead and do that. As you point out, when you're in this meeting, with all of these regular people from all across the country, all these PPC candidates, and they're saying, well, what's going to happen when they might call us racist? They will call you racist. What are you going to do? How are you going to stand up against that? It's difficult. Nobody wants to be called these kinds of things. And that is the strategy from the other side all the time. Listen, guys, I want to change track here and talk about the actual personal divides that we've seen in the conservative movement, going back to that X Spaces that I bumbled across the other day. And I bumbled across it. I think, Jason, you were talking. Somebody had inferred that you were autistic. And I went, wow, man, like, why would you say something like that? He's sitting right there. And then I also heard you, Greg, talking to, was it the kid who tried to start the Convoy 2.0?
No, that would be Kevin. You're talking about the Convoy 2.0. He was talking to Alex Zoltan.
Okay, so what the hell was that all about? Like, it's like cry bullying. So not you, but the other guy. And I'm thinking, what are you guys doing?
Hold on. Let me just start. I made a very quick TikTok today that I think really summarizes the framework in which we should talk about this. Because we're talking about, why is there all this infighting in the right wing? Why is everybody mad at each other? They're trying to smear each other or attacking one another. Look, we don't like politicians when they can't answer basic questions. If a politician is there, they're here to be taken seriously. And a journalist shows up, they ask them a good question and they deflect, they avoid it. Or they say, you're from Rebel News, I don't even like you. If you're a serious person in politics, you should be able to answer questions, explain yourself, and respond to criticism. Okay. And so this also applies in the right wing. If you're a pundit, if you have a Twitter account, if you're saying you're going to promote a protest, you should be able to answer questions and respond to criticism. When it comes to this Convoy 2025 thing, I saw this person promoting it. I saw it was picking up steam. I'm like, well, I see some problems with this. Here are the problems. Here are my criticisms. Here are my questions. And then there was this sort of victim mentality of like, it wasn't just me. There were other people saying things, but I saw the conversation go in this direction of like, there's this infighting. I'm being attacked for wanting to protest. And it's like, if you're a serious person, then answer the questions and respond to the criticisms. This isn't hard.
I agree. I completely agree. So you would think that people who are on the conservative movement would be a little bit more thick-skinned when it comes to things like that, and more honest, because that's what we stand for. Jason, you get this constantly. I've seen, like, I get attacked quite often, but generally not from people on our own side. First of all, it's happened a few times, but usually it's from the lefties. You have been, ever since the Coots trial that you've been covering when you first rose to prominence, they have been after you and after you and after you as a government agent. They've called you mentally ill. They've called you a grifter. I mean, every single thing. And they never offer any proof, by the way. How have you been able to withstand that kind of barrage from people who were supposed to be on the same side, theoretically?
Well, it's exactly what Greg said. You have to be in the position to take it, to respond to it. It's criticism and critiques. You need to grow some thicker skin. I made a decision, Shadow, with my family to go ahead and go public. And I knew immediately this is going to be a very difficult road. If I came out with the Conservative Party, 50% of the country would hate me just for being with the Conservative Party. And if I was with the other side, the other 50% would hate me. So what did I choose to do? I decided to go independent, which means everybody hated me. I had no support. So I had to grow some thick skin. And what ends up happening, Shadow, and you have been on the other side of this as well. You've received this as well. People will just label you and then they'll run with it because they have an emotional response or they don't like something you say. For me, the problem that I had, which isn't a problem that I created, is I don't pander and I will tell the truth. So when people want to control the narrative and they control what I say, you can cover this, but you can't cover this. You can have this person on, but you can't have that person on. When that starts to happen, I am, and I think maybe this is why they use the term autistic asshole, I am disconnected from my emotions. This is what they say. I disconnect from my emotions. I say, look, guys, I don't care. I don't care if it hurts your feelings when I tell the truth, or I don't care if it hurts that person's position if I tell what the judge actually said or what was the evidence in that court. If you actually tell the truth, you really upset a lot of people. And I don't care. Okay, so maybe that's why they go with this autistic asshole commentary. And then the way it was framed in this space yesterday, I had to sit there for like 20 minutes while two people were arguing about how autistic I was when I'm not autistic at all. But I had to sit there and listen to this. But it doesn't bother me. I would much rather be on the side that goes after each other, critiques each other, and keeps us sharp than not. I would rather have the ability for Greg's and other people out there to say, hey, there's something fishy about this guy. Is he co-opt? Is there something wrong with him? And then we look into it and then we get an answer. I'd rather be on that side. And if you can't take the heat, please, that you don't belong in the kitchen. And if I can't take the odd comment in the courtroom, in the hallway, online, well, then I'm in the wrong profession, because I'm going to be getting a lot more of that from a lot more powerful people. So this is just training for me. I'm just treating it that way. And it really doesn't bother me. I have a loving family and I got a good support around me.
Greg?
Yeah, so I wanted to add to this whole phenomena too of the infighting and sort of offer a sort of theory of what's going on here. I actually chatted with Randy Hillier and asked him a question recently, which was, I said, Randy, is it me, or, is 50% of the people that you run into in politics who have their stuff together and they have a message and they're able to kind of like push forth their message? Is it me, or is 50% of those people, do they end up being a plant for the establishment? And he was kind of like, yeah, that pretty much most of the time, if you look into it, it'll be somebody who's there to push their agenda. And the thing is, guys, Canada is not a really big place. Canada's not a really big place. And, if establishment parties wanted to go in and infiltrate movements and try to steer the conversation in a certain way, discredit certain people, then they'd certainly have the resources to do that. When it comes to some of this infighting or some of the stuff that you see online and, disavowing people, I personally feel like some of these individuals, I'm not going to name names because, first of all, I don't think it's fair and it's on a case to case basis. But my theory is some of these people are there to insulate the Conservative Party of Canada from criticism. So anybody who might be there to say, hey, we should be talking about mass immigration or mass deportations more. By the way, a majority of Canadians, or just under the majority of Canadians, support deportations. And this is something that rarely anyone talks about. But, you'll see systematically different people online who maybe have big platforms being like, oh, no, well, that's actually racist. We don't actually want to do that. Or that's too expensive to deport people. And personally, I feel like that's my theory, that some of these people are there to insulate the Conservative Party of Canada from criticism.
Interesting. Do you have any tips, either one of you guys or both of you, as to how you can spot somebody who has been co-opted, either online or in person?
So I have a great rule of thumb for this. Let's go back to the convoy. Okay, trucker convoy 2022. What is the mainstream media doing? Are they criticizing the people in the House of Commons? Are they punching and criticizing the people in Ottawa who have caused this protest with vaccine mandates? No, they're criticizing the protesters. They're criticizing the little, not to be offensive, but peons, the little, the peasants, the people complaining and getting it all up in their business. Look what they did. Look what this person did. And I think this applies to some of these, I call them kind of right-wing gatekeepers or Conservative Party gatekeepers, whereas they're not criticizing the people in Ottawa or Pierre Poilievre for not being strong on mass immigration. They're criticizing in the other direction. People who have less institutional power, people who have less of a platform or less of a, less power in the situation. I think that's a pretty good rule of thumb. If they're not punching towards Ottawa, punching towards the real corruption, the real sort of dishonesty, and instead they're punching in the other direction, that's a big red flag for me.
Interesting. Jason?
I would concur too. Yeah, make sure you're punching up, not left, right, or down. You're punching up, because we have to keep people accountable. And you actually bring up a good point there, Shadow, because it's something that was going through my mind as I was going through some of what I would call bullying in the courtroom. What do they want? Do they really want me out of the courtroom and then Stephen Johnson can get his shenanigans in there and not get caught? Do they really want less recording of what's going on and witnessing of what's going on? The answer is yes. Well, why? Why in the world would you want that? Well, because they want to control narrative. It comes down to that. And there was no left or right in that courtroom. There was people that had a narrative and a desire to hear a certain narrative go forward, and ones who didn't. The people that wanted the truth were there to hear what the Crown, the defense, even the judge, and the men themselves and witnesses would say, so we can actually learn what was going on, as opposed to listening to what CBC said as a narrative, or even the counter narrative that we created on our side, like innocent until proven guilty. These men are innocent. Well, what we learned in the trial is some things, yes, some things not so much. It's a bad decision to bring your firearm to a protest. I think a lot of people agree now, but not before. Like if I would have said that pre-trial, I would have been attacked just for that opinion. So to answer your question, like what should we be looking for? Well, exactly what Greg said. Where are they punching? Are they punching to the people beside them? Are they trying to give the Crown an open court where there's no accountability, nobody watching? Well, then they're punching in the wrong direction. And there was a lot of people that did support me, and they're just not vocal. They don't go on the internet and come up with cute names for me, Jason the Magnificent. Like they don't do that, but they will come up with negative stuff if they really hate you. So I take this with a grain of salt. And if they weren't talking about me, weren't noticing me, and weren't calling out my faults, and sometimes they're right, sometimes I make mistakes, well, then I wouldn't be a better person for it. So I don't say I enjoy it, because it gets pretty bad, like death threats and people approaching my family in the food court and making things uncomfortable. Like some of this stuff is really ridiculous.
Your family is being affected by this?
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. I had to pack my family up for 6 weeks to leave our home because of some threats that came to our property. And also when we were out having lunch, they will approach us.
Come on,
there's no
you
barriers.
guys. I mean, there's no need for that stuff. That is outrageous. That's outrageous. What needs to happen with the movement? And I'm not talking about the high profile people, the people who do shows, the people who are out there, like Save Free Speech. I think, Greg, is a very big deal. And I'm happy that you're working on that project. Jason, your show is taken off still. I think that there's people who are watching this right now who are saying, what can I do? And how should I respond? Do I need to toughen up? Do I need to tone it down a bit? Because I'm not sure if you guys look at the comments of the stuff you do, but I look at my stuff, not every day, but I do look at my stuff, and I see some people in there screaming and shouting in their capital letters and calling names and, bad language and all of that. And I say, totally understand that you're frustrated and that things aren't going the way you want them to go, but you can't force a square peg into a round hole. Sometimes things are going to take time. I get it, man. We're all frustrated. So what's a message that we could give to the audience that is a unifying one, that steels people for what's yet to come? Because we're not through this problem just yet.
It's a loaded question, and I do have to kind of take off soon. They're starting to clean up and get me out of here.
Somebody's sweeping behind you, actually. So.
They are. You can see them in the window there. But a quick answer is, if we don't learn to love again, it's all over for us. That's in my theme song, and I play that every time I start my show and end my show to remind everybody that we need to learn to love again. And I close all of my shows with a reminder to take care of yourself. I think it's important that you're strong and take care of yourself, your family. And then you also shake the hand of a neighbor or a stranger. So expand your circle. And why do I remind everybody each show about that? It's because I love them all very much, even the ones who are watching me that hate me, including RCMP, who are watching, waiting for me to slip up, say a word that incites something. Like, I have records now that they actually do that. So
Hi,
even
RCMP.
in the face of that, they're watching. It's half my audience. Nice to see you all. Good to see you. I'll see you in the court one day, I'm sure. But what I mean by that is we really need to learn how to love again. And that means forgive faults. And I'll make mistakes. I'm a faulted human being. And accept me for who I am. And if you actually can look at how my values and my principles, I lead by them, and those are aligned with you, and you actually have the similar or same values and principles, we can get along. And I don't care if you're left, right, center, up, or down. If you're willing to have dialogue, so am I. But when it comes to bad will and people who just want to catch you to say something or clip you or get you to say some words and they can just get you out there, bad will, I hope you can identify that quickly and just move on. Mute is a good option on X. I don't block anymore, but mute is a good option.
All right, bro. I'm I'm going to let you get going because I know you got to get out of there, but thanks for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good to see you
Really
again.
great to see both of you. And Greg, keep up the good work. I'm still looking forward to what you're going to do there. And Shadow, thanks for having me on. And I love the fact that you're trying to find some unity. That's a good thing.
All right, brother. Thank you. Talk to you again soon.
Bye. See you, Jason.
All right. There is Jason Lavigne Wycliffe still here. What do we need to do, man?
Yeah, so you ask a very, very good question. I ponder that a lot. And I'll use the example of Convoy 2025 again, because I think sort of the reaction by some people kind of exemplifies part of the problem that these people might be having. Because some people who have followed me for a long time, they're like, Greg, like, why are you discouraging people from protesting? Like, what's going on? Like, isn't protesting a good thing? And I guess part of the solution, or like, what do we do, is, and it's tough, but part of it is taking a moment to confront how bad things really are. And it's not to be depressed or to be discouraging, but people want simple answers. People want easy answers. I just want to vote for Polyev. I just want to do a convoy to Ottawa to fix everything. I just want to become part of America, right? And unfortunately, things are not that simple. Things are not that cookie cutter. And politics is not for everyone. It's a blood sport. It's awful. And I think part of the turmoil that we're going through is really a historical part of our growth as a nation. We have gone through, sure, Vimy Ridge in different parts of our history, but we're a young nation in comparison to the States and many other countries. And we have never really had to confront a horribly rotten ruling government. It's gotten really, really bad. And because of that, we're going through a lot of growing pains. I mentioned the PPC candidates who first showed up who have never joined politics before. And I think that's kind of extending to today. People got red-pilled during COVID, and they're seeing how bad things really are, and they're trying to participate in politics, and then they're being like, wow, politics is ugly and horrible, and the problem really is that bad. But when people say, what do we do, what do I do, I always say, like, it's cliche, it's Jordan Peterson, but like, start with yourself, start by cleaning your room and making sure that you're taking care of yourself first and foremost. Because in many ways, like, you can only really start to make a change until you are coming from a good place. Jason brought up a great point of we need to love again. And I think there is a lot of truth in that, because you know what else is easy? Hating on people, saying, you know what, instead of doing something productive, I'm just going to crap all over this person, right? It's very easy. And, I'm guilty of it too. I've done it many times. Instead of trying to build something, instead of trying to solve this problem, you know what? I'm just going to flip the board over and say Polyev sucks and the PPC sucks and Shadow sucks. And one time I saw a bad thing here. It's very easy and it feels really good, actually. It feels really good to do that.
For a second or two. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, maybe. But hey, there's a lot on the Twitter feed. You can just keep going. You can just keep going, hating and it feels great. And avoiding that, I think, is also important. And I said the work on yourself, because part of that is really, forgiving yourself and really adding out, I've felt black-pilled, guys. I've felt really, really awful about what's going on. And sometimes I need to kind of add context to, you know what? I'm a sensitive person. You know what? I'm someone who actually does have the eyes to see what's going on. You know what? My nation has been brainwashed to hate itself and to inject itself. This is a really crazy situation, actually. And I do that to kind of give myself some sympathy, to be like, you know what? This actually is a really intense situation. And the fact that I am overwhelmed and feeling demoralized and depressed is actually kind of normal, given how messed up this situation is. But anyway, this is turning into a therapy session. I think I've said too much already. I don't know.
I was going to say, how much do I owe you for the hour?
We'll do a discount. We'll package it with last week. It's all good.
All right, brother. Thank you for coming on tonight. And please tell us all about Save Free Speech before you go.
Yeah, absolutely. So thankfully, the prorogation is not good, but because of that, a lot of the bills are now suspended. They're thrown out, or at least they have to go back to the drawing board to stage one. So Bill C-63 is not as urgent. However, it's just going to manifest in a different way. So, SaveFreeSpeech.ca is still going to be a free speech watchdog, but we're also pushing forth with the documentary. We have,
Excellent.
about half a dozen more documentaries. We're going to go on the offense, try to get rid of the existing hate speech bills, and also expose the Canadian Anti-Hate Network, which are the smear merchants in the country. And we might be starting a campaign to defund them. Who knows? But
It's
if you want
interesting. I can't believe that the left-wing corporate media goes to the Anti-Hate Network on a regular, for a panelist or to quote them for something, because you have exposed them. I think you and that what's her name, the lawyer in Toronto,
Prima Sad, yeah,
Prima Sad,
she published HateGate, #HateGate, and basically said, yeah, this group was basically lying about Diagolon and Jeremy McKenzie, which in many ways you could say got circulated with the police and the RCMP and Marco Mendocino, which justified the use of the Emergencies Act. They've been caught lying, telling distruths, but yet they still receive funding to be hate experts. And this documentary is going to tell that story and, share it with the rest of the country.
Have you still got the preview up on the website?
We're working on a much better preview. It should be out within a week, hopefully. But cool. You'll see more of it. Just check out SaveFreeSpeech.ca and check out the donation link if you want to support it.
Okay, brother. Thank you for coming on. We'll talk again soon.
Thanks so much for having me. Cheers.
All right. There is Greg Wycliffe, everybody. Let's continue on. Extension. All of the All Access members are probably wondering if there's going to be an extension tonight. And I've got something called 1,000 Words with Bob Moran. Comes from GB News, Resistance GB. And it's very fascinating, but it's also very, very long. And it's in two parts, right? So the whole thing altogether is probably 3.5 hours. So we could run it. We could run it in 3 or 4 parts, but we'll see what happens. And we're already over time tonight, so we may not do an actual extension tonight. Think of this as the extension. How about that? I never do this. Sometimes I keep the feed up on Telegram. Sometimes I want people to join the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. It's important that you go there if you're an All Access member. And the reason for that is that's where the chat goes when the extension is on. Tonight, the extension is for everybody. There's still a couple of things that I want to talk to you guys about before we close it off for tonight. And this one here is kind of a big deal. Remember how we've talked about buying up properties, whether it's the Chinese, whether it's the Indians, the Pakistanis, foreign bodies, whatever. Well, now, and the federal government, Trudeau talked about using federal lands to put up housing. And what kind of housing? The kind of housing that you find in the UN SDGs, 17 SDGs, and all of these smart city plans across the country, across the world, actually, through ICLEI Canada and the United Nations. So Wab Kinew, who is probably going to be the next federal leader, there he is there. Wab Kinew, who is probably going to be the next federal leader of the NDP once they fire Jagmeet Singh after whenever this election is the NDP Manitoba Premier right now. And this headline from townandcountrytoday.com says Manitoba government buying properties as part of homelessness plan. So I'm wondering what this means. The Manitoba government buying apartment buildings and plans to start clearing encampments next month as part of its long-term strategy to reduce homelessness. Several buildings are being bought and renovated, and the province aims to partner with municipalities and community agencies to offer support services such as addiction treatment. What kind, Wab? You want to bring safe injection sites to the province. You said it's like that cough drop. What is that cough drop? It tastes awful and it works. That's what Wab Kinew said about these safe injection sites and about the safe supply and giving drugs, hard drugs away to addicts. What was that what was that called again, you guys? That cough drop or the cough medicine? Uncle Buckley's mixture. It's like Buckley's mixture. It tastes awful, but it works. No, it doesn't, Wab. No, it doesn't. It just creates more misery and more addiction. Wab Canoe says we're going to work together and ensure that everybody has a place to call home. I've got an inherent problem with this because I believe in many cases, homelessness, yes, it can be because people just could not make ends meet and they were forced out of their home. But I think the broader problem is a cultural problem. People do not want to work. People actually want to be homeless. Do you understand that there are class systems within homeless communities in pretty much every city in town where there are homeless people? I know this because I have spoken to many homeless people in Winnipeg, in Calgary, in Ottawa, in Kingston, Ontario, in London, Ontario, and Toronto. Same thing they all say. There is a class system. There's actually a hierarchy within the homeless community. So you can imagine when these new apartments are going to be occupied by these homeless folks, who's going to move in there? The hierarchy is going to be on the top, and then they're going to work their way down to the dregs of the homeless community on the very bottom floors if they get in at all. It's societal. Homelessness is, no matter how much money you throw at the problem, and no matter how large your heart is, there is always going to be homeless people because they want to be victims. And Canada has become a victim society, sadly. As a matter of fact, there's a book about that. Let me see if I can find it. This is how I operate in the extension, generally speaking, guys. I just look for things. Yeah, this is exactly it. It's called The Victim Cult, How the Grievance Culture. Let me just click on this for the full title. The Victim Cult, How the Grievance Culture Hurts Everyone and Wrecks Civilizations. In this wide-ranging look at why societies fail or succeed, the victim cult explains how victim cults arise: relentless blame of others, faulty moral reasoning, and misguided identity politics. No one disputes that some people are actual victims of others, of accidents and life. But we also know someone who seems stuck in that mentality, that victim mentality. They make life worse because of an intense focus on the past. On a personal level, the chronic victim thinker can be toxic. But what happens when victim narratives dominate entire societies? The victim cult tackles this too easy reflex to take offense and blame others from college campuses to the heights of political power. It also infects citizens who see each other as victims or privileged, but never as diverse individuals with choices. It's by Mark Milke. The book is called The Victim Cult, How the Grievance Culture Hurts Everyone and Wrecks Civilizations. And I can tell you this, that if you give somebody in this mentality something like a free place to live, they're going to want more. They always want more. Another story from Manitoba: the University of Winnipeg cancels English language program and puts their women's soccer team on hiatus. There's going to be some upset male soccer players there. Oh, biological male. So they're canceling English language lessons for all of these new immigrants that have come to Manitoba. Do you know that Manitoba hit their quota last year with this immigration nominee program? 10,000 new, apparently skilled workers arrived in Manitoba last year, and the NDP government wants more, but they don't seem to want them to learn to speak the language. I wonder why. Well, we can't afford it. A program at the University of Winnipeg to help international and domestic students improve their English skills is being shut down, and the school's administrators are blaming Ottawa's crackdown on the number of international students allowed to study in Canada. Yeah, sure. I'm sure that's what it is. This is an interesting story. And I would like to talk to these folks here. This was sent to me today. And then I was tagged in several dozen other posts on X and Instagram and Facebook about this as well. And I would really like to have this woman, these folks on the show, help. This is a Give, Send, Go, or sorry, GoFundMe. Help ostrich farmers fight to save herd from unnecessary cull. This is an incredible story. So here's what it says on the GoFundMe. My name is Allison, and my aunt Karen Esperson is one of the owners of Universal Ostrich Farm. We're devastated to announce the farm has tested positive for avian flu, and as a result, an order has been made to cull the entire herd by February 1st. This is a potentially catastrophic tragedy for my family and a huge potential loss of valuable science that could help mitigate the migratory flight risk and spread of avian flu. There are over 400 ostriches on this farm. This is not a commercial poultry farm. It's a backyard flock of flightless birds living in an extremely remote area of BC under strict quarantine measures. And the vast majority of them are showing incredible resistance to the virus. More than 300 of them have not even showed one symptom. Wow, that sounds familiar. But instead of ostriches, we're talking humans from like a few years ago. In the beginning of the outbreak, they were losing 3 to 4 ostriches per day. But in the past week, there's only been one death, and the only birds that have died have been young. All the older birds with strong immune systems, some are up to 35 years old, are absolutely fine. These ostriches can live up to 75 years. They are not the same as regular poultry, and they should not be classified in the same way. And yet, the government wants them dead. You got to cull them. Cull. That's a nice way to say kill. So if there's anybody who knows these folks, Alison Turnbull, Katie Pasitney, British Columbia, Karen Esperson, if those names ring a bell, please message me on Facebook or go ahead and email shadowdavis@gmail.com. I got 2,000 emails I have to go through in the next couple of days. So it's going to be tough. Get a hold of me somehow. I want these folks on the show. The government coming in and telling you that you have to kill 400 birds. Ostriches. 70, in some cases, 75 years old. Senior citizen ostriches. That's ridiculous. And I want to know if there's other orders like this that are happening across the country as well. That's insane. All right, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the show tonight. I want to thank you for being here. Don't forget to like and share. Get it out there to as many people as you possibly can on whatever platform that you are watching on right now. Hey, you want to know what? Before I go, I haven't done this in such a long time, and I always feel bad about it, but then I think about it after the show is over. Does anybody have any questions? Does anybody want to ask a question about anything? Feel free to go ahead and do that. I'll wait. I'll wait for you. I know typing can take a few seconds. Seeing Jeff Stone in the comments tonight from Tacit Investigations and Security. Jeff and I have some great conversations, not every day, and it's usually through Messenger, but yeah, we have some great conversations about stuff that might be going on, stuff that could happen. It's all pretty cool. Elaine says, sounds like what's happening in the States with the chicken being killed because of the faux virus. Yeah, that's happening. Yes, indeed it is, Robert. I don't know why people are so fascinated with that. What's your name? I can tell you the story of how I got this name, but I've told the story so many times, I think it would probably bore you. It bores me. Right? I get halfway through it and start yawning. Paul. Oh, hey. Okay, Paul Mazurek. He's the guy with the poo nose. I was telling you earlier in the show about the little rubber Trudeau faces that are brown, looks like poo, but it's poo dough. Thank you, Paul. Do you know where I can get a poo dough? Do you have any poo doughs left? And if you do, you should put them on sale, like $5 a piece. A commemorative poo dough for all the years of angst and tribulation that we've been through. Kendall wants to know why there's so little said about the UN and the World Economic Forum partnership. Really? Are you serious? Like, you mean generally speaking out there in the mainstream or here on the show? Because I do talk about that quite a bit. I think we talked about it. I had Klaus Schwab on the show tonight, not actually him, but I did play a clip from him. The World Economic Forum is starting on Monday in Davos. So yeah, we definitely talk about that, and the UN and their 17 Sustainable Development Goals and ICLEI and the Partners for Climate Protection and the Canadian Federation of Municipalities and the UN joining agreements, all of that stuff that's creating all of these smart city plans that they're rolling out all across the country. Yeah, we talk about that quite a bit. I wonder how that meeting in Steinbach went tonight. Kendall says, yeah, very serious. Yeah, so am I. No, and I get it. I totally do. But I do talk about that quite a bit here. I can't talk about one thing all the time, but I do talk about that. That's probably one of the overriding topics. Shady. I hope that nickname doesn't stick. Have you seen that Bill Gates patent? If so, what do you think it is? Bill Gates patent? No. Is this where he wants to block out the sun? That one? You talking about crypto? Inserting microchips? He's involved with all that stuff. I mean, he is, in my opinion, a James Bond villain. And there are many of them out there. You know, they all sit around this table a couple times a year. No, I don't think they do that. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe they do it in the Bilderberg meetings, or I don't know. But they certainly are all associated with each other. And I'm not exactly sure if that has much to do with the predatory rings out there, you know, the kind that Jeffrey Epstein used to run and Diddy and those guys. But I do think that there is some involvement with that. Again, you know, you guys, it's easy to sit back and say something like, for sure, you know, like these guys are this, but you can't unless there is actual proof that something like that exists. Now, I say what's written down, what you can find on websites, and I go deep on a lot of things, and I have a great crew of people, and I want to thank you guys, you know, for sending me, Janice, and, you know, there's so many of you guys. I don't want to start naming names because I'll probably wind up forgetting somebody, but there's so many of you guys who, Michael, you know, who send me, Sean, who send me great information, and it's the kind of stuff that's very difficult to find in a lot of cases. And I do go looking. A lot of the time, I do go looking for this stuff. But these guys, you know, they've seen it before because they've been involved with this for longer than I have, and they know where to get it. They know how to access it quickly. So they send it to me, and if I can run it, and if there's context for it, of course, I'll put it on the show. A lot of times I put it in the extension, which is only on my website, usually, because if you run it on Facebook, they're still censoring. Right? They'll shut down the page. They're still censoring in Canada, maybe not in the United States, but they're still censoring in Canada. And YouTube, forget about it. So the channel gets shut down. And actually, you know, this can go back to the discussion that I was having with Greg and with Jason tonight about you got to smooth your edges sometimes. Right? You can still do the things you want to do and say the things you want to say. It's how you say them. It's how you present them. And it doesn't mean you're compromising your positions or your beliefs. It just means you're presenting them in a different way. But when it comes to playing actual video of, let's say, you know, I got a video tonight. This goes back a couple of years, and I sent it to a friend of mine via text. And this is of a supermodel, Mexican supermodel, Gabriela Rico Jimenez. Now, this is on an Instagram reel, believe it or not. I'm not sure how it made it onto an Instagram reel. And I can't put it on because it will be an immediate shutdown. I can't. I would put this on the extension for all access members normally. But the video is of this Mexican supermodel, Gabriela Rico Jimenez, who emerged screaming from a glitzy hotel claiming the elite were, quote, eating humans, unquote, and then she just vanished. She was gone. We have heard stories like that over and over and over again from survivors. And what do they do with these survivors if they can't get to them and unalive them? What do they do then? Anybody? What do? They make them crazy. Or they make them seem crazy. Or they actually turn them crazy. That was the story with Randy Quaid. That's what they did to him. He says it. Watch some of these videos. Put them together. Again, you can't say for sure what has happened here because we haven't got the actual proof. You can only speculate. And that means that when you do it on a show like this, you have to be very careful of how you phrase certain things, lest you be taken down or lest you become a crazy conspiracy theorist. And people already think I'm crazy enough as it is. And this is the other thing Jason was talking about tonight. You know, some people, the crazy messages I get, you guys, it's funny sometimes. People will message me and say, Shadow, I really love what you do every night, man, but you got to go further. You got to push harder. You got to dig deeper. And there's other people who say, oh, man, there's too much. I can't take it. So you can't win for losing, but you do try to find a happy medium. Here's a great example, and I'm going to put this on tomorrow night, not tonight, because we're running out of time here. But Raylan Fox, right? She's a mom, Manitoba mom, who has taken a great interest in all of the pornographic books that are available in schools and public libraries in our province. And she's doing videos right now, and it's a video series, and it's called Those Books Aren't in My Kid's School, and it's now got a volume 5. I played volume 4 last week. It was brand new last week. And there was a lot of people. What she does in these videos, Raylan, is she reads from the books that are available in schools for kids as young as like 6, 7 years old, right? Heavy sexual content. Heavy sexual content and all that gender ideology stuff, all that stuff available in these books. She reads them in the videos that she puts out. And I had episode 4 on last week, like I was saying, and some people in the comments freaked out. They couldn't take it. They wanted me to shut it off. So I did shut it off halfway through. And I responded to them simply by saying, I'm not shutting this off. You guys, and this is, I guess, where growing a thicker skin comes in from the earlier conversations we were having tonight. You got to grow a thicker skin and understand that this is the stuff that the globalists are using to destabilize our society and upset the nuclear family. That's what they're doing. They're trying to radicalize kids very early on. And this is something we've been fighting for a while now. So yes, I am going to absolutely play what Raylan takes the time to put together for your benefit. It's not to disturb you. It's not to insult you. It's not to frighten you. It's to inform you. That's why I play that. It's not for any sensationalistic purpose whatsoever. I want you guys to know. We can sit there and we can say, oh yeah, those books are in schools. They're terrible. I know. And you know, you're not really feeling it because you don't know what's really in these books until you actually hear it. So instead of being offended and, oh my God, shut it off, please shut it off, or demand that I shut it off, lest you leave and never come back. I've had threats like that as well. They always come back. No, I'm going to keep playing those videos. And Raylan has put out episode 5, and I'm going to put that on the show tomorrow night. It's important. These are the things that we're fighting against. And guys, I'll tell you, people also complain to me a lot. How come you didn't talk about this tonight? How come you didn't talk about that tonight? There's only so many things you can cover in 90 minutes or 60 minutes or 120 minutes or whatever it is. I do try to get to as much stuff as I possibly can, and I'm looking at it all day long. Right from the second I wake up in the morning, I'm instantly going to all of the feeds and sources that I have to see what's going on today. It's important that I do that all day long. I'm looking. And then maybe about 4:00 in the afternoon, I start to piece it all together. What are we going to talk about tonight? What's important to my viewers? And the only way I can discern that is by looking at the comments that you guys write down every single night to see what's important to you. Now, having said that, what's important to one person like Rock Girl, who's watching on YouTube right now, as opposed to Paul, who's watching on Facebook, or Kendall, who's watching on Facebook, or Tracy, who's watching on YouTube, or Lynn, who's watching on Facebook, might be different for everybody, right? So you got to try and find a happy medium in that way. I do know that right now, the political stuff in Canada is probably the top priority, simply because people want Trudeau gone so bad, and the Liberals in general for that matter. I get it. So that's why I put that on, unless there is something absolutely earth-shattering. That's why I put that on at the top of the show every single night, and then we work our way back into what's been going on in other seedy corners of the world, the country, whatever. That's how I do that, because, like I say, you can't get everything in all the time. I said, when I first started the website, like a year ago now, I said that I was only going to go 60 minutes every single night, and then the rest would be available in the extension for all access members on the website. And you want to know what's happened? I go an extra 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes every single night before I go to the extension. And one thing I will say, those people who are members, the all access members, they're amazing. Those guys, like, they have conversations back there, right, on the Telegram group, the Shadow at Night community on Telegram. Go ahead and join that, and you can talk with all those folks. They're a great group of people, and they're there faithfully every single night. I'm not sure how many of them there are, actually. Some people comment, some people don't. I think the vast majority don't. They just sit there and they watch and they listen. That's where we provide the real deep dive stuff. The real deep dive stuff. There are people who still want to get to the bottom of the face masks and the jabs and the mandates, all of that stuff. And yes, we do talk about that stuff. I do talk about that on the main social media show as well. And that's important. If any news, factual content comes out, then we absolutely will cover that. It's essential that we cover that. And we need to keep talking about that stuff. It's the only way that we're going to force the politicians, no matter what party they're in, to take some accountability for what they did. We've had vaccine injured on numerous times. I can't even count how many times we've had a vaccine injured guest on the show. It's very difficult to watch. That's another thing. When you see somebody come on whose face has been harmed significantly by what they took, they can't move one side of their face. One eye doesn't open properly. They can't hear any longer. They've got a constant ringing in their ears. They can't walk up a flight of steps. Some of them have turbo cancer. Some have died. And I put them on because it's important that people know that these people are falling through the cracks of our medical system based upon the fact that most doctors in Canada, if you go to them and say, I've got one of those injuries, one of those shot injuries, they're not going to listen to you. They'll get up, they'll walk out the room. Seriously, I have had people who have actually said that to me. Can you imagine? You don't know what's wrong with you, but you think it's probably associated with that thing You tell the doctor that. He or she gets up and walks out the room without even saying, just walks up. What? You don't want to look into this? You don't want to see? You don't have a medical scientific curiosity as to what might be happening to me that didn't ever happen to me before I took this? Is the Hippocratic Oath a real thing? We've gone through that as well. So much content we have covered on this show. And there's still so much content to continue covering. And I'm happy to do it. This is, quite frankly, doing this show every single night. Considering all of the harsh content that we have to cover sometimes, you guys there in the comments, your support, your dedication to finding out the truth is the thing that makes me keep going, keep doing this. So thank you for that. I am totally and completely sincere when I say that to you. Thank you so much for your support these past 4 years. Never would have been able to make it without you. Whether you knew, whether you're a regular here for the past 4 years, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I truly appreciate you guys. I love you all, and I appreciate you all. I got to go, but I'll be back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock Central for another Shadow at Night live stream. Bye for now.